just another minute here. Today's topic for our webinar, it's a Taking Control webinar, Financial Strategies for Women. We're very glad that you could join us here today on this Wednesday. And before we get started with the meat of the presentation, I'd just like to introduce myself and my company. My name is Sydney Rutledge. I'm a certified financial planner here at Bogart Wealth. I've been with the firm for 5 years. I love what I do. Very, very excited to present this information for you today. I hope that it's helpful for all of you attending. And let's go ahead and jump in. So a little bit about Bogart Wealth before we jump in today. So Bogart Wealth is a RIA or registered investment advisory firm here that we're the trusted trusted advisor to over 1,300 households. We have just under $3 billion in assets under our umbrella. And our mission is to help our clients achieve financial peace of mind by preserving and maximizing intergenerational wealth. We are a fiduciary to our clients, which means we legally have to put their interests above our own. We custody our assets at Charles Schwab for your protection, and we are a fee-only wealth management firm. We have a full operations and financial planning team in our Virginia and Texas offices. All of our advisors here are certified financial planners, and they're located in both McLean, Virginia, Houston, Texas, and also the Woodlands, Texas. This is more of our financial planning team here and our operations team. And we also have HR, business development, training, and marketing. Bogart Wealth's headquarters are located in McLean, Virginia. In addition, we have 2 offices in Houston, 1 in Gessner, and then I'm located at the one in the Woodlands. For those of you who work with us, you know that planning is at the heart of what we do. Most people think that planning for retirement is just about the investment management piece, but everyone's situation is entirely different, and it's very important for us to focus on your goals and manage the issues that are important to you as an individual. If you're new to Bogart and have not gone through our financial planning process, I highly encourage you to reach out to one of our advisors or myself, and we would be able to specifically talk about you and what your family is working towards. There is no charge for a financial planning consultation or for us to run a financial plan for you. So if that's something you think you're interested in, we'd be more than happy to help you with that goal. Now, let's jump into today's presentation. This is part of our retirement readiness series that we're doing. You can see various topics here on the screen. We like to focus on retirement income planning, tax planning, estate planning services, and even long-term care planning and Roth versus traditional 401k, just to give you kind of a flavor of the different webinars that we do. So today, I want to talk about women and financial planning and how important it is to focus on your financial goals. So according to statistics, women make up about half of the workforce, 57.5%. Women account for 52.3% of all workers in management, professional, and related occupations. Women also own millions of businesses. Women earn the majority of bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees. So what I'm hoping to demonstrate with these statistics here is that women have significant economic clout. Today, we're going to talk about being in control of your finances. Whether you're single or married, widowed or divorced, women need to plan ahead for personal and financial security. More than anything else, this requires that you take control of your finances to help ensure a more comfortable financial future for yourself. A couple of statistics here that I like to focus on. Women who work full-time earn about 84% on average of what men earn. Women are more likely to take career breaks for caregiving. Women also live almost 6 years longer than men, and approximately 1/3 of women age 65 and older live alone. Women have a higher likelihood of living on their own in retirement. According to recent statistics, older women are much likely to be married than older men. 47%, in fact, of women are married compared to 69% of men. Women age 75 and older, 43% of them live alone. For married women, the loss of a spouse could mean a reduction in retirement income from Social Security and or pensions if your spouse's income was something that you were relying on. Before we go on, I do want to mention that there is no one size fits all. That is not all women are going to face all of these challenges. That's why I think it's important to work with a financial advisor that knows your specific situation and can help you as some or all of these life-changing events can come up. Obviously, there are very different stages of life and characteristics that define women: single, married, widowed, employee, small business owner, all of that. It's still important to plan for the unexpected. So statistically speaking, a majority of women are likely to face at least one of the challenges that we've noted here. So it's important to just be aware. I do see a raised hand, so I'm going to pause and see what that is. All right, we did have a question come in. Is this being recorded for viewing later? Yes, it is. So there will be a recording for this webinar. All right, we'll jump back into it. All right, so to address many of the financial concerns that you may have, we're going to cover 5 action items that are designed to help strengthen your financial future. First is going to be getting your financial house in order. Next is putting your money to work by investing. Then we're going to talk about building a healthy nest egg for retirement, then facing life's challenges with confidence. And then lastly, we'll talk about addressing insurance and estate issues. So this is a bit of a longer presentation. Hopefully you'll hang with me. Put a question in the chat if there's anything you want to pause and have me addressed. All right, step 1, getting your financial house in order. These are things like getting together all of your financial statements, logging into everything, figuring out how to access all of your different online accounts, setting realistic goals for your money, living within your means, maintaining good credit, having an emergency fund, and then talking about the rate at which you should be saving money. This is an example of some financial statements, just to kind of show you what they look like. A balance sheet there on the left and a cash flow statement on the right. Setting goals are guideposts for planning for your financial security. Some goals are money-oriented goals. They're quantitative. For example, how much money do I need to generate retirement income to purchase a home, pay for vacations, or help cover a child's college tuition? Other goals are task-oriented, such as getting your financial papers in order, like I mentioned, having online access to everything, or maybe just learning and researching more about your investment options in your employer-sponsored retirement plan. Goals can also have time limits, so short-term, intermediate term, or long-term. This is where making a list can be very helpful of your goals and classifying them by timeline so that you can kind of clarify your priorities and help you see the big picture. So developing and maintaining smart money habits is a key strategy to being able to meet your financial goals. So let's take a look at some of these goals. At the top of the list, and I can't stress this enough, is going to be living within your means, or better yet, below your means. This means spending less than you earn, not using money to make yourself feel good, and paying yourself first. So if you're having trouble living within your means, you'll need to find a way to spend less or increase your current income. That's an option as well. To spend less, you can look at cutting back on things like discretionary expenses. If that's not enough, then you can look at your fixed cost. For most people, housing costs are probably their biggest fixed cost. So if there's an outstanding loan on a property that you have, is there an option to refinance it to save some money? I know in today's current interest rate environment, interest rates are probably higher. So refinancing isn't happening as much as it has been in the past. But if you can't lower those fixed costs, then you might need to look at opportunities to increase your income to be able to allow you to save some more. That could look like looking for new opportunities with your current employer, finding a new job, or retraining in a new industry. Paying yourself first is extremely important, and it means routinely putting money into savings before spending on anything else. A tip that I like to do, I practice it myself personally, and I recommend it for a lot of the people that I work with, is just to set up your savings on autopilot. Before you ever even have a chance to spend that money, just have a reoccurring draft to go over from your checking account to your savings account. And before you know it, you'll have a decent little chunk in savings there. Another key habit to getting your financial house in order is going to be maintaining good credit. Now, the credit system is very, very complex. It's a big beast, but this just kind of scratches the surface. About maintaining good credit, paying your bills on time, checking your credit report annually to make sure there's no inaccuracies. I didn't know this until later on in life, but by law, you are entitled to receive one free credit report every 12 months from all three major credit reporting agencies. You can do that by visiting annualcreditreport.com and pulling your credit report history. So if you find any inaccuracies or errors in that report, you can contact that agency to help get that resolved. Typically, credit scores range from 300 to 850. Obviously, the higher, the better. Having a high score means that you get better rates for loans and even extra insurance premiums. So important to make sure that you're having good credit there. This is kind of a chart that shows what affects your credit score. So you can see the biggest is going to be payment history and the amounts of outstanding debt that you have. So just something to keep in mind as you get your financial house in order here. Next up is going to be building an emergency fund. It's a very smart habit to have a cash reserve. It's a rainy day money that you can set aside for life's little and not so little emergencies. Or you can also set aside savings for bigger financial goals, down payment on a home, maybe a vacation that you're going to take, or large periodic expenses like home renovations, things like that. By having a cash reserve readily available to draw on, you reduce the need to charge expenses on your credit card that you may not be able to pay back immediately. As a general rule, your cash reserve fund should be large enough to cover 3 to 6 months of your basic living expenses. It's okay if you can't save that amount. It's better to have a smaller cushion than none at all. So savings accounts usually offer high safety, but a relatively low fixed rate of return because you're not taking risk to invest that money. They don't require a large initial investment, and the funds are readily accessible. You can also do things like CDs and money market funds. You also hear about high yield savings accounts, or HYSAs. CDs, money market funds, and high yield savings accounts do pay you more of an interest rate. So that's an option. It's a great place to park cash where it's still, money markets and high yield savings are still liquid. CDs do require that you tie up the money for a certain period of time, which can be a drawback for some people, but they also do pay good rates of interest. So those are all options for savings. This is an example of just how saving a little bit of extra money each month could mean a lot during your retirement years. We've got Jane and Sally here, they're friends. Let's assume they both earn $100,000 each year from their job. Jane saves 5%, Sally just saves 3% more and does 8%. The monthly amount for Jane is $416, and for Sally, it's $666. They're both going to save for 15 years. And you can see just how much more Sally has at the end of it, $178,000 versus $111,000 for her friend Jane. They both have the same earnings of 5% per year. That compounding interest really does a number on that ending value. Step 2, after getting your financial house in order, is going to be putting your money to work by investing. Well, where does the money come from? To buy a home, to travel, to pay for college, or prepare for a comfortable retirement. All these goals take money, and this money can come from your investments. So putting your money to work by investing could result in a better future down the road. This is an investment risk spectrum. So we go from cash all the way up to CDs, stocks, and bonds. As you go up on this chart, you are taking more risk to potentially get more return. The higher the potential return, the more investment risk you must bear with your assets. I talked a little bit about the power of compounding with that example with Jane and Sally. This has an even more aggressive savings goal. So if you have an initial deposit of $50,000 and then you leave it untouched for 30 years and you just get an average 5% rate of return every year, and you contribute monthly $1,000 to that account, at the end of 30 years, it's over $1 million. That is the power of compounding when it comes to investing. These are sample asset allocations that may be appropriate for investors with different tolerances for risk. That's a really big part of making sure that your finances are in order, is making sure that your investment categories are allocated correctly for your risk tolerance. I always tell my clients, if you work with me, you'll know the best type of investment you can be in is the one you stay in. If you're invested in something that is really, really aggressive, and it's causing you to lose sleep and then eventually maybe take the money out prematurely, then that's not a good investment for you to be in. You need to be in something that allows you to feel safe, take an appropriate amount of risk to get growth on that money, but not something that is that's overly aggressive, that's causing you stress in your life. It's not worth that. Number 3, building a healthy nest egg for retirement. This is a critical planning step for everyone, but especially for women. Building a healthy nest egg will last throughout retirement, and it is probably one of the biggest challenges that you're going to face, especially when you have competing priorities. There was a survey that was conducted by Transamerica, which is a financial institution, about what are your greatest fears in retirement. For most people, it's outliving their savings and investment. Life expectancies are getting longer every year as we go along here, which is a great thing. Everybody wants to live longer, but it does mean that means your money has to last for a longer period of time. Next to that, it's going to be that Social Security will be reduced or cease to exist in the future. That's a big concern for a lot of people. And then declining health that requires long-term care and long-term expensive medical care. So, let's talk about the importance of starting early. How much could you save? This table shows how much that you could accumulate by age 65 if you invested $2,000, $5,000, and then $10,000 per year. We can look at the savings accumulation at age 65. If you're able to save $2,000, then that's $425,000 at the end of age 65. If you're able to save $10,000 instead, it's over $2 million. As you can see, the sweet spot here is to start investing as early as possible. So if you're in your 20s or 30s, it is a great time to start building that wealth. Even just a little bit every single year will help to help build that retirement nest egg. As you get closer to retirement, knowing your expected retirement age can help you create more realistic projections for your nest egg. Keep in mind that you can't always control your retirement age. For example, you might be unable to continue working because of poor health, changes at your company, such as downsizing, or the need to care for a family member. So this is a hypothetical example. It's not reflecting the performance of any specific investment, but just used to demonstrate the compounding effect. Retirement income planning is a huge thing that Bogart Wealth helps our clients with. So the biggest question is, how much income will I need in retirement? How do I make sure that I'm investing and saving enough to get there? Kind of the baseline is that most people tend to need 70 to 80% of their pre-retirement gross salary. So another way to look at it is you need 100% of your pre-retirement net paycheck. That's what hits your bank account. Most people don't change their lifestyle in retirement, or they don't want to. They want to be able to just completely replace their lifestyle that they had while they were working. There's lots of different sources of retirement income, which we'll touch on each one of those. Social Security, pension, personal savings and investments, and then part-time earnings could also be part of your retirement income. So now that we've talked about how much annual retirement income you'll potentially need, we probably should discuss how long that retirement income may need to last. When it comes to retirement, how long should you plan for? The good news is that we're living longer lives. The bad news is that this generally means that your assets will need to last for a longer period of time. The average 65-year-old woman can expect to live another 20 years until age 80. The average life expectancy is expected to continue to increase. And so retirement may last for over 25 years in a lot of cases. People are also wanting to retire earlier. I have plenty of people that come to me saying, I'm 55 and it's time to go. So that means an even longer period of time that their assets have to last for. How much annual income will you need? You got to understand what makes your retirement unique. So it's important to prioritize your lifestyle goals. And It's important to also remember that there are different phases of retirement. Lots of times you'll hear us lovingly refer to it as the go-go phase, the slow-go phase, and then the no-go phase. Right when you retire, that's the go-go phase. You've been working for all these years. You have earned your leisure at that point. You're wanting to travel, go see grandkids, just really enjoy this pile of money that you've hopefully built up. So that's when we're going. Then it kind of starts to slow down as you get a little bit older. The home projects start to fade out, and then we get eventually to the no-go years, where in your later years you're not up for traveling as much. But what does increase in those later years of retirement are typically medical costs. This chart demonstrates how expenses will change in retirement. I think a lot of people assume that they will spend much less in retirement, and some people do. But reality is, we typically see people maintain a certain level of spending in retirement. It's just the categories that change. So you can see this here, right in the middle there. Healthcare, it tends to go up over time, 11% after you're 65. And 75 plus, it's going to cost you on average $7,000 a year. Counting for inflation. This is a big part of why doing a financial plan can be so helpful, because it can test your predicted expenses and your assets against the rising costs of goods and services. So you can't assume that things are going to cost the same that they do today. You need to consider the potential impact of inflation on those expenses. It can be overlooked, but if you don't take inflation into account, you can sometimes underestimate the amount of annual income that you'll need. If inflation runs at its historical long-term average of about 3%, a given sum of money would lose more than half of its purchasing power in just a 25-year time period. For example, assuming a 3% inflation rate, a gallon of milk that costs $4 today would cost you over $8 in 25 years to buy the same gallon of milk. All things being equal, inflation means that you'll need more retirement income each year just to keep pace. To outpace inflation, you should try to have a strategy in place that allows your retirement income stream to grow throughout retirement. Now let's talk about Social Security. This is another kind of beast of a topic. It's very broad, but we will touch on a lot of the meat with Social Security today. It's a major source of guaranteed income, lifetime income for most Americans. Guaranteed means that once you start taking monthly Social Security benefits, you'll get that money every month for as long as you live. You're entitled to receive Social Security benefits if you have worked and accumulated a minimum of 40 work credits, which equals about 10 years of work. Worker benefits are based on your highest 35 years of earnings. If you haven't worked long enough yet to qualify on your own, you may qualify for spousal benefits based on your spouse's work record. And a spousal benefit can be claimed at full retirement age, which for most people is around age 67. The full retirement benefit is usually equal to 50% of your spouse's primary Social Security benefit. To determine the amount of Social Security benefit that you might receive, you can view your Social Security statement online at ssa.gov. Highly recommend doing that. If you've never looked at that before, it'll just give you a good idea of what you can expect Social Security to pay you when you do start collecting. So Social Security continued here. To better understand how your benefit could increase by waiting to claim Social Security benefits, delaying it past the earliest age you can collect, which is 62, and the latest that you can collect is 70, you can see just how this goes up over time. Again, full retirement age is 67 for most people. This benefit projection is to pay $2,000 a month. If you wait until 70, it's almost $2,500 a month. Talked briefly about spousal benefit. This is just more details about it. So you must be age 62 or older to qualify for the spousal benefit. You have to have been married for at least 1 year, and your spouse must first file for Social Security benefits. If you claimed at your full retirement age, the spousal benefit would be 1/2 of your spouse's primary insurance amount. All right, let's move on to another leg of the retirement income stool, which is employer pensions. So if you're lucky enough to have a pension benefit, and do consider yourself lucky because every year there are fewer and fewer Americans that are covered by these pension plans. So pension benefits can be complicated. So it's important to understand how they work. You need to understand the payout options. A lump sum is that's one of the more common options, is to take that money as a lump sum. That way you can invest it and have control over when you take money. You can also do a single life annuity, a joint annuity if you're married. For the qualified joint survivor annuity, the participant receives a reduced amount of benefit every month so that the surviving spouse can continue to receive that income once the spouse whose pension it was passes. How you decide to collect your pension may be one of the most important retirement decisions that you make. Again, while it's important to kind of explore your options with a financial advisor, here at Bogart Wealth, we can run different financial plan models for you to show you what does your overall retirement scenario look like if you take the lump sum or you take an annuity if you do have a pension. So be sure to get in touch with us if that's a question you have about your retirement income. Then we have to fill the gap. So there's an annual income need for retirement. And then you have income from Social Security or a pension if you decide to take your pension as an annuity if you have one. The difference between what your expected annual income needs to be and what your pension or Social Security is going to pay you, that's called the gap. We have an additional annual income need that we have to fill. And let's get into how we fill that gap. Before we do that, there's an important distinction between different types of investment vehicles. So we'll briefly touch on those. There's tax deferred or qualified money, which is typically your employer-sponsored retirement plans. These are your 401ks, 403bs, things like that. This is pre-tax money, traditional IRAs and annuities. Then there's taxable money or non-qualified money. This is your standard brokerage account, your high yield savings account, money market, things like that. Then there's tax-free vehicles. Roth IRAs and HSAs are the two accounts that come to mind. I love a tax-free vehicle. It's typically more difficult to get more money into a tax-free vehicle. So those are the three basic types of money, and we'll talk about how you can use them to fill the gap. We'll start with an employer-sponsored retirement plans. I mentioned 401ks, 403bs, 457s. Lots of employer-sponsored plans will let you contribute on a pre-tax or a Roth basis, or on an after-tax basis if allowed. It has tax deferred accumulation, which means you don't pay taxes now on the contributions, but you will pay income taxes when you take the distributions from that account. And a lot of employers also offer a match. So that's if you put in 5%, they will match 5%. So be sure to check with your company what that match is. If at all possible, want to make sure that you're contributing to that employer retirement account, at least up to the match, because if not, you're leaving free money on the table. Let's look at IRAs. There are two types, traditional IRAs and Roth. One is not necessarily better than the other. It may come down to whether or not you want to pay taxes now versus later. For most people, there is a place in their financial plan for a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA. But again, Roth might be a better choice at some phases of life, and traditional might be a better choice. In general terms, if you anticipate that your tax bracket will be lower after you retire, contributing to a traditional IRA may be a better choice, especially if your IRA contributions are tax deductible. On the other hand, if you don't expect to be in a lower tax bracket after you retire, then Roth might be a better choice because you'd rather pay the taxes now at your lower tax rate than a higher tax rate in the future. Now, another advantage of Roth IRAs, which is why I love a tax-free vehicle, which a Roth IRA is that any contributions that you make to a Roth can be withdrawn without taxes and penalty at any time. However, for a qualified tax-free and penalty-free withdrawal of any earnings, you must meet the Roth IRA distribution requirements. IRAs are subject to federal contribution limits, which are indexed annually for inflation. In 2024, workers can contribute up to $7,000 or $8,000 if you're over the age of 50 in total contributions to both a Roth and a traditional IRA. Eligibility to contribute to a Roth does have income limits. For single filers, it's $143,000 of income. For married filing jointly, it's $240,000 of income. That was in 2024. There are no income eligibility limits to be able to contribute directly to a traditional IRA, but there are limits to be able to deduct those contributions against your income. Another big difference between traditional and Roth is that money inside of traditional IRAs, pre-tax vehicles, are subject to RMDs, or required minimum distributions. This is it's based on a formula that the government mandates that at a certain age, you have to start taking out a portion of your pre-tax assets. Whether you're going to spend it or not, you have to take it out and pay taxes on it. Roth IRAs do not have RMDs. So you'll hear people talk about Roth conversions a lot of time. That is taking money from a pre-tax vehicle, traditional IRA, and converting it to a Roth IRA. Most of the time, it's to get that money out of the calculation for RMDs. These are the annual contribution limits for 2025. I touched briefly on, kind of the fact that there's income limits for Roth and traditional. Those are those numbers here for 2025. Now let's get into a little bit of tax planning. There are some considerations for minimizing your tax liability. You can hold assets that generate interest income in qualified accounts, because then you're not paying taxes on those until you withdraw it. You can hold assets that generate dividends or capital gains in non-qualified accounts. So that's a brokerage account. You can kind of structure your distributions to come from different accounts so you can fund your income without having as high of a tax liability. And then there's all different types of income listed there, and then their taxability. One other good thing about Social Security is that at max, as of current tax law, a maximum of 85% of Social Security is going to be taxed as ordinary income. These are the ordinary tax brackets for 2025. So based on how you file, single head of household, married filing jointly, you can see your marginal tax rate and then your average tax rate. Capital gains tax rates, that's the tax that you pay on any growth, any price appreciation in a brokerage account or a non-qualified vehicle. If you take away anything from the difference between capital gains rates and ordinary income rates, it's that no matter what your ordinary income rate is, your capital gains rate is always lower than your ordinary income rate. So that's why that's important. Okay, so what do you do if you discover that after factoring in your personal savings, your projected income still won't meet your expenses in retirement? The best solution for dealing with a shortfall will depend on the severity of the projected deficit and the length of time remaining before retirement. But consider one or more of these following options. You could delay retirement. Working longer always means more money, more accumulation, shorter distribution period. You could also consider part-time work during retirement. Spending less during retirement, dealing with kind of those lifestyle cuts. And then a last resort of income is your home equity or tapping into cash values of life insurance policies, if that's something that you have as part of your net worth. This is kind of, like I said, last resort is there for a reason. We definitely don't want your first option to be, taking a loan out against the equity on your home. We would definitely try all these different things first before going to something that extreme. But it is definitely an option. So step 4. How do you face challenges in life? Because they will come with confidence. Divorce, widowhood, Social Security survivor benefits. These are unfortunately challenges that many women will face. Life is not always fair and it's not always easy. Things happen. Employees are let go. Couples divorce, illnesses spring up, spouses pass away. So when you take the steps to strengthen your financial future, not only will you be in a better position to enjoy life in the good times, but you'll also be in a better position to cope during the not so good times, which many of us are likely to face. It often during these stressful times, we find that women turn to financial professionals for help. So let's take a closer look at some of these implications associated with these challenges. So divorce, these are some statistics. The divorce rate for men and women aged 55 to 64 is 43%. Nobody likes to think about it, but what would your life be like in the event of a divorce? Aside from being an emotional upheaval, divorce can be financially devastating, especially for women. It's hard to generalize how anyone will fare after a divorce. Retired women and those close to retirement may find it more difficult to recover financially, knowing that they have fewer years to regain their footing, especially if they've relied on their spouse's income for a long time. Younger women may have more years to regroup financially, but if there's young children involved, then they face the challenge of working and raising children potentially on their own, which is a situation that will be more difficult if they've been out of the workforce for a period of time. Everyone's situation is unique and presents its own challenges. And there's alimony could be a potential part of the conversation, custody disputes that drag out, lawyer fees, things like that. So again, important to make sure that in the event of a situation like this, you do engage a financial professional to help you through this. Dealing with the details of divorce, although state laws vary, there are some states that are common law versus community property. The state that I live in, Texas, is a community property state. So that means that for all intents and purposes, any assets that were acquired during the marriage are just split 50-50. Whether one spouse worked and one spouse never did, it doesn't typically matter. Most things are split 50-50. And there are obviously exceptions to every rule, but that's just kind of a general rule of thumb for community property states. Beyond state law, there are details of the divorce agreement, including property settlement, spousal support, alimony, and child support. As part of the divorce decree, you may want your ex to carry life insurance that you are the beneficiary of to potentially replace child support or spousal support in the event of their passing. So you would be the beneficiary of that policy. Retirement plan benefits are often among the most valuable in a marital asset, and they must often be divided at the time of divorce, not when the spouse who has the retirement assets retires. They're typically divided at the time of the divorce being finalized. If you're entitled to a share of the asset in your former spouse's retirement plan, it's typically accomplished using a quadro or qualified domestic relations order that's issued by the court. Of course, this can work in the same way for your ex. In some cases, one spouse may waive the right. You don't necessarily, if that's not something that you guys want to be part of your divorce decree, one spouse can waive and say, no, I want to give 100% and then I'll keep 100% of this account, but it typically works out equally. So Social Security benefits is another interesting one with divorce. So if you were married for at least 10 years to a fully insured worker and you did not remarry, you are entitled to your former spouse's Social Security benefits based on their work record, whether they're living or deceased, as long as your own spousal or Social Security benefit would be less than what you would receive based on your ex's work record. If your ex-spouse is living, then you can receive Social Security spousal benefits starting as early as age 62. The maximum benefit, if claimed at your full retirement age, would be 50% of your ex's full benefit. Now, if your ex has passed, you can receive divorced survivor benefits starting at age 60, not 62, and your benefit would be reduced if you claim it prior to your full retirement age. Finally, it's important to consider any tax implications of a potential divorce, such as your new tax bracket as a single filer. Does that open up any tax breaks for you? Are you now eligible to contribute to any different types of accounts? Maybe you were precluded before as a married filing jointly person, and now that you're single, if your income has dropped, that might open up doors to actually save in different types of tax advantaged accounts, potentially. This is common financial mistakes that we see people make going through a divorce. The number one, and I've actually seen this personally, is not updating beneficiaries and legal documents post-divorce. So these are things like wills, medical directives, power of attorneys. I've seen it, or unfortunately, a couple got divorced. They did not update their wills or their medical directives in this situation, and one of them fell ill and had to go to the hospital. They were incapacitated and unable to make decisions for themselves, and their ex was the one listed in their medical directive. Now, luckily, they had a good relationship, but I can see that being a testy subject if you don't update those legal documents and beneficiaries. Failing to consider the tax implications, as I mentioned. Underestimating post-divorce living expenses. I think a lot of people assume, oh, well, it's 50%, of the marriage, so I'll spend about half of what I did when I was married. And typically, what we find is people actually spend more like 75 to 80%. So just want to make sure you're being honest about those expenses so that you can plan for the future accurately. Emotional decision making, emotions run high after a big life event like that. So you just want to make sure that you're kind of keeping that in check for how you're planning. Overlooking hidden assets or debts is also a big one. Widowhood. So women are almost 3 times more likely than men to become widows at some point. And approximately 54% of women age 75 and older are currently widowed, whereas for men, it's only 20% over age 75. Being caught off guard is one of the reasons why many widows face financial hardship. There's cash flow considerations to take into account when dealing with becoming a widow. Lots of times women who are widowed and men, they face a number of financial decisions right off the bat before you're usually emotionally ready to do so. So it's very important to seek help from family members and friends, and potentially the guidance of a trusted financial professional to help get through that very volatile time right there at the beginning. A typical start is to start with investigating life insurance and survivor benefits, which can be a critical source of financial support if you are widowed. In addition to any personal life insurance that your spouse may have owned, check with your spouse's current and past employers, along with any trade unions or associations they may have been part of for any group life insurance. Oftentimes, this is a benefit that many employees receive at no additional cost to them through their work. So that could be something to look at as well. You may also need to transfer the ownership of property if you're widowed. There's bank accounts, real estate, stocks, bonds, mutual funds that all will need to be updated. If your spouse had a will, the terms of the will determine how property interests will pass. If any property is owned by a trust, then the trust document will be the one that determines how property will be distributed. Property that passes via will go through a process called probate. That is a court process that can be costly and time-consuming depending on where you're located, whereas property within a living trust is not subject to probate, so you avoid that costly and time-consuming part of the process. If your spouse died and did not have a will, then the property will pass according to state law. And if you and your spouse own property jointly, then or as joint tenants with rights of survivorship, then the property passes to you immediately. So if you own your home in joint name, and both of your name was on the title and on the deed, then that property will pass to you immediately. If you later decide to sell your marital home, keep in mind that a surviving spouse may exclude up to $500,000 of profit from the sale of that principal residence if it occurs within 2 years of the spouse's passing. After 2 years, the exclusion then drops to $250,000. As for income taxes, you may file a joint tax return and claim an exemption for your spouse for the year in which your spouse passes. In addition, there is a filing status called qualifying widow or surviving spouse that allows you to use joint tax returns if your spouse died in the previous 2 years. You must not have remarried, and you must have a dependent child in order to use qualifying widow or surviving spouse filing statuses. There are many tax considerations that comes if unfortunately widowhood is something that you have to deal with. Highly recommend getting in touch with an advisor and also a tax professional, a CPA, to help navigate those critical 2 years after that happens. So there's some options for handling retirement assets if you're widowed. If you are the sole beneficiary of your spouse's employer-sponsored retirement plan, their 401k or their pension, and by law, by the way, spouses are generally required to be the beneficiary unless they signed a waiver form. You need to contact the employer for information about what options you have. Before you make any decisions about rollovers or distributions, make sure to carefully consider your current and future income needs as well as your tax situation. Generally, you may take assets as a lump sum, which could incur a sizable tax obligation. You could take distributions based on your own life expectancy, or you could roll the assets into a 401k or into your own IRA or an inherited IRA. Beginning in 2024, you may choose to leave the assets in the plan and begin taking RMDs, required minimum distributions, based on the age at which your spouse would have taken them, which may be more beneficial from a tax standpoint. There are lots of options, so the optimal choice is going to be specific to your unique situation. We touched a little bit on Social Security survivor benefits before, but we can look at it a little bit more closely. So, I mentioned previously, I'll kind of skip to the bottom of this. If you remarry before the age of 60, then you'll forfeit that survivor benefit. A lot of people don't recognize that. They think that just because they were married for over 10 years, that you'll always get the spousal benefit, and that's not necessarily the case. So, just something to keep in mind as well. All right, and then step 5 here is addressing insurance and estate issues. So this is a final section. We're going to talk about protecting assets with insurance, how to leave a legacy with a thoughtful estate plan, and it involves having more than just a will and an executor for your estate, although these are important tasks. The 6 major areas of insurance coverage are medical, disability income, property and casualty, liability, life insurance, and long-term care insurance. A well-designed risk management or insurance program can help protect you and your estate from the unexpected. So it's important to look at all these areas of insurance coverage. There's 3 questions it comes when we're talking about medical insurance. Having adequate health coverage is a critical step in your financial security. You might have health coverage through a workplace medical plan or a private insurance company. So it's important to ask, how much will this health insurance plan cost you? What's the premium, the deductible, the out-of-pocket max? Are the costs that will vary across different plans. So it's important to know these, that what portions you're responsible for paying for. The next one is, what does this plan cover? Before you sign up for a specific plan, if you have an option, it's important to read the policy information and just look closely for coverage gaps. Is there any type of medication that you currently take or will always take that's maybe not covered by one plan, but it is covered by another? Things like that are important to consider. The last one that I think a lot of people fail to ask is, how much will the health insurance plan, or excuse me, not how much will it cost you? Can you keep your doctors? And for a lot of us, we've been seeing the same doctors for years. So it would be a big change of plans to have to change that just because you changed insurance. So that's an important question as well. Now, let's turn to Medicare, which is another arm of the health insurance world. So, Medicare is the federal health insurance program that covers most people who are 65 and older. It's comprised of different parts that each cover specific services. Original Medicare is divided into Part A, which is hospital insurance, and Part B, which is medical insurance. Medicare Part C, which is the Advantage part, and Part D, which is prescription drug coverage, are provided by private insurance companies that are approved through Medicare. This graphic here helps illustrate your main options for getting Medicare coverage. You can choose whether or not you want to enroll in Original Medicare or Medicare Advantage, which is Part C. Each has its advantages and disadvantages, so you'll need to compare the costs and benefits before you select one. If you do choose the original Medicare, you might also add Part D or prescription drug coverage and a supplement Medigap policy is what they're called on top of it. If you are within a year or two of your 65th birthday, you'll want to start doing research about Medicare and Medicare enrollment rules and deadlines. You can find that information by going to medicare.gov. Life insurance. There's 2 questions you want to ask about life insurance. How much coverage do I need? And what type of policy would meet my needs, term or permanent? Permanent is also called whole life sometimes. So the primary purpose of life insurance coverage is to help protect your dependents financially if in the event something were to happen to you. Even if your children are grown and self-supporting, there still could be reasons for you to have a life insurance policy on yourself. This benefit can be used to pay for final expenses, estate taxes, and other obligations, or to leave an inheritance for your loved ones. So the first question is, how much coverage do I need? Obviously, what might be appropriate for a family with two children and a stay-at-home spouse could be significantly different from the needs of someone who is divorced, maybe has grown children, or maybe just has extended family members that are the beneficiaries. When estimating, when estimating your benefit, oops. There we go. When estimating your benefit, it's important to ask yourself what policy would meet your family's needs. And term or permanent life insurance is also part of the question. Term is purchased for a specific number of years. When the term expires, you are no longer insured. And if something happens to you and you pass, then there's no benefit left for your beneficiaries. Permanent life insurance is in force for the rest of your life as long as the premiums continue to be paid. In addition, permanent insurance builds a cash value, which can be accessed through your lifetime if needed. Access to that cash value through policy loans or partial surrenders could reduce the policy's cash value and death benefit. So additional out-of-pocket payments may be needed if you want access to additional dividends or investment returns. So there may be surrender charges as well to access a part of that cash value. So life insurance policies are complex. There are lots of different types out there to meet various different needs. So important to talk to an insurance rep if that's something that you're interested in. As I mentioned earlier, long-term care is another potential challenge that many people will face. Here are some statistics that may surprise you. They surprised me. Almost 2/3 of Americans with Alzheimer's disease are women, and about 2/3 of informal or unpaid caregivers are women. Long-term care costs can be daunting. The average median cost for a private room in a nursing home is $108,000 a year. That's about $9,000 a month. Receiving care at home can also be very expensive. The hourly cost for a home health aide is $27 an hour. Think about how difficult it might be to pay these costs out of pocket for any length of time. They add up very quickly if that's something that you'll need. People who need long-term care generally have a physical or a cognitive impairment that requires different levels of care. Because women have usually they live longer and have longer life expectancies than men, they often outlive their spouses. They face a greater risk of needing long-term care by a paid caregiver. And even so, some people continue to have misconceptions of long-term care, thinking it will never happen to me, or my family will care for me, Medicare will pay for it, things like that. And unfortunately, Medicare will not cover long-term care costs, and you may not want to spend down your assets in order to qualify for Medicaid. So this long-term care can really throw a wrench in a lot of people's plans. So these are the long-term care, statistics that are specific for women. More than 70% of nursing home residents are women, and the average age of admission is 80 years old. There are options when it comes to covering long-term care costs. There is traditional long-term care insurance that provides a daily or monthly benefit for covered long-term care services. And the payments typically kick in when you need help with two or more of the activities of daily living, which are things like eating, bathing, dressing, transferring yourself from bed to chair, things like that. Premiums are partially based on the age you are and your health when you sign up for the long-term care insurance. However, annual premiums do tend to increase over time, and there's a chance that you'll never need custodial care even after you've paid for all of these premiums. Long-term care insurance is typically very expensive. So if you're uncomfortable with the idea of a long-term care policy, you might consider a life insurance strategy that has a long-term care arm of benefits. It's called a long-term care rider that can be attached to a whole life insurance policy that allows you to tap into that account value for long-term care expenses. Optional benefit riders like the long-term care rider are available for an additional cost, and they're subject to the contractual terms of the insurance policy, but they may not benefit all individuals. There are also hybrid long-term care policies that are an option as well, and that combines permanent life insurance and long-term care coverage. Many of these policies require a substantial upfront premium, so it may not be an option, but buyers of those policies don't have to worry about future rate increases or the issuer canceling the policy. So could be an option as well. Lastly, here is self-insurance. Candidly, this is the option I see most people go with a lot of the time, just because long-term care, the cost of long-term care insurance tends to prohibit people from moving forward with those policies. So self-insurance is the route that I see people typically go. All right. So what are the things that you can do to help take responsibility for your financial well-being? We're going to start with number 2. You can become a more knowledgeable investor. Do your research. That will help you feel a lot more confident in the decisions that you're making for your future. Next up is assessing your financial situation and make a financial plan for the future. Again, I know I sound like a broken record. Financial planning is at the heart of what Bogart Wealth does. Let us run your numbers. Give us a call. Sit down with one of our financial advisors. There is no cost to you to have us run your financial planning numbers. Next up is plan and save for your retirement. I know that's the bulk of what we talked about today. Protect your income and assets with insurance. And then lastly, create your estate plan. Thank you very much for your time today. That is the bulk of the presentation we've got going on here. If you are looking at working with a financial advisor, we think these are some important characteristics to focus on. Working with a certified financial planner is paramount. It is the gold standard in our profession, and we highly encourage you to work with a CFP if at all possible. We also think it's important to have someone that speaks in a way that you understand. Talking above your head doesn't do anybody any good, and it's really important to have that open rapport and communication with your financial professional. If you feel called to, please reach out to myself or one of our other advisors. We would be more than happy to sit down with you to do a one-on-one financial strategy situation to just get to know you and your situation. So please reach out to us if you'd like to engage us. We'd be happy to help. Thank you again for joining today. I really, really appreciate your time.